Earlier this year, I made the resolution to see as few movies as possible in the year 2025. This was not done because a doctor told me to do it. This wasn't done as a dare by any of my friends. Movies were not getting in the way of any of my friends or relationships or work or anything like that. The reason I kind of made this resolution for myself was purely creative. I know that sounds bizarre coming from a filmmaker, but today I kind of wanted to. I don't think I've shared that on this channel before, and I wanted to talk about what exactly I mean by that and why I decided to do that. Now, to preface everything first, I haven't seen no movies this year. Like, I saw Sinners, I saw Superman, I've seen The Materialist, I've seen a couple movies here and there, and there's movies I'm planning to see later this year. Like, I know for a fact I'm gonna go see Avatar 3. I'm really excited for that. I'm gonna go see Weapons. I don't know the status of the Nirvana the Band the Show movie, but I know that's a movie that I can't wait to see if it comes out this year or not. But backing up a little bit, when I was younger and when I was growing up, like most film students and film, obsessed people, I tried to see as many movies as possible. Every single weekend felt like an opportunity for a new discovery. Every single free afternoon was a chance to watch a new movie that I hadn't seen before, whether it was an old movie that I had heard a lot about or was really famous or well renowned, or if it was a new movie that was just coming out. There was nothing more exciting and creatively stimulating as going to the movies or watching a movie at home. That was pretty much all I did. That was all I liked to do. That was all I thought about. Over time, what's happened for me is I've slightly lost interest in movies. Not to say I don't like movies, not to say that movies aren't what I make and do, and, movies define a huge part of who I am. However, that's not necessarily where I get all of my creative stimulation these days. And this was a slow realization. This wasn't something that just suddenly clicked and happened overnight. It was a slow moving process over the last several years. And other filmmakers, other big filmmakers talk about this. Ridley Scott is someone who I've heard talk about this before. I've kind of come to realize that when all you do is watch movies, you lose interesting things to say as a filmmaker. I thought there might have been something wrong with me at one point. I remember there was a season, I think it was summer last year, where there were all these new movies coming out, and I had almost no interest in seeing them. I wasn't opposed to seeing them, but I also wasn't really dying to go and see these movies in the theater. And I think this has happened for a couple reasons. I think one of the reasons is I have spent a lot of time just watching movies. I am almost 30 years old, and that's a long time to be watching movies, because I think the very first movie I saw, was Phantom Menace in movie theaters. I've been watching cartoons and, obviously kids movies since I was like a toddler and that sort of thing. Not to say that is absolute the pinnacle of what cinema can do, but I think there's merit to all of that. But it's just I've been watching movies for a very long time. And when you do something for a long time, at least for me, I get very bored of it. Again, that's not to say I've lost complete interest and total interest, but that's one reason I think I haven't been as interested in movies so far. Another reason I think I haven't been as interested in movies as I have in the years past is because I feel like sometime within the last couple years, I ran out of things to say as a filmmaker. If you watch a lot of my movies, I feel like, maybe this isn't obvious to everybody, but if you watch a lot of my movies that have been released so far, I see the influences on those movies feel very obvious to me. I feel like I'm directly ripping off a lot of my favorite films and filmmakers. I don't feel like I'm necessarily bringing anything new to the table. And I realized, and I feel like it really is true, that when all you do is watch movies and talk about movies and think about movies, you do lose out of interesting things to say, because your entire worldview is filtered through the lens of cinema. Now, I'm not saying that I was totally movie obsessed and I was at the movie theaters every single day. In fact, I think my cinema consumption has really kind of decreased ever since film school in particular. I just found when I enjoy other art forms or enjoy other aspects of life, I feel like a more creative individual. When I was a kid, I used to see a really good movie and it used to really creatively stimulate me, and it made me dream of my perfect movie. It gave me a lot of creative ideas, it gave me a lot of images in my head, and it made me want to create and make things and do things. And movies don't exactly do that for me anymore, whereas looking at a beautiful picture might, or reading a good book, or learning a new language or a new skill, or traveling, all of those other aspects of life and art, those are the things that I feel like I'm drawing from creatively these days. Those are the things that give me ideas and give me fuel and give me the urge to create. Much more so than movies. You know, at the beginning of the year, you see a lot of chatter about what movies are going to be coming out this year. Everybody's talking about them. Everybody's excited for different movies, that this and that. And in years past, you know, many years ago, I feel like I would try to watch anything and everything and as much as I could. Recently, though, I feel more of the mind of, you know, I'm just going to watch what I really, really, really want to watch. And if I don't see a movie in theaters or, you know, on DVD or whatever, it's no problem because I wasn't dying to see it. Because I'd much rather spend my energy towards new skills, new experiences, and finding fulfillment in those areas rather than just going to the movies again and again. That's not to say that there are no good movies being made or there's tons of terrible filmmakers or anything like that. I'm just saying that for me, there's not a ton of filmmakers or films that are coming out that I am dying to see in the theater or rush out to go see right away. Quite frankly, I think, though, that there's a lot of smaller, independent filmmakers, underground filmmakers who really excite me. Lesser known stuff. And then, of course, there's big blockbusters and bigger movies like, again, like I said, Avatar 3, just because that's just something, you know, to me, that's Hollywood at its best. Simply put, I've missed a whole lot of movies that have come out this year, and I don't honestly feel like I'm missing too much. And again, no shade to any of those filmmakers who have released movies this year. I'm sure there's a lot of movies that I will see eventually, but just for this year, 2025, I'm in no big rush to see any movies in particular, with the exception of, you know, some of the movies I've mentioned already. Now, so that might beg the question, how am I spending my time if I'm not watching movies every single week or anything like that? And so rather than just tell everybody my kind of weird resolution, I thought I'd share some of the things that I'm doing instead of watching movies and some of the art forms and experiences that have really influenced me this year and given me a lot of creative ideas for my filmmaking and the projects that I'm working on. This is kind of an eclectic group of things and movies and experiences, so I don't know how cohesive this is going to feel at all. In fact, I feel like it's very just all over the place, but I just wanted to share you all some art and things that have been inspiring me creatively lately. So the first thing is dance and ballet. Dance in general, but I had this program here that I went to a show. The Oregon Ballet Theater, they did a production of Giselle earlier this year that I went to, and that was a really fun thing. I've kind of talked about it on this channel recently, but I've been really drawn to the art form of dance and the physicality of it and the kinetic nature of it. And what's particularly given me a lot of ideas is how, when it comes to dance, your tools that you have to play with are time and space. And when you make movies, it's the same thing, time and space. So I've been really interested in watching dances, see how observing kinetic forces in movement can impact me as a viewer, and what ideas it gives me about pacing, about tone, about communication, about language without words, and that sort of thing. I've been to a lot of dance performances in the past few years, but in particular this year, I saw Giselle, and that was something that gave me a lot of ideas with my projects. I made an animated film that was just released a couple weeks ago that you may or may not have seen, called Ballet Moon, so if you check that out, the influence on my work is going to be probably pretty obvious. But yeah, if you have the chance to go see a ballet, I'd recommend it. Give it a shot if you're a filmmaker or any kind of dance performance, because again, we play with time and space, so do dancers. Shifting subjects here entirely, I read this book. This is a history textbook that I accidentally read. It's called Fifth Sun, A New History of the Aztecs by Camilla Townsend. I read this because some of the kids at the school I work at were working on Indigenous peoples projects. And I was working with some students on those projects, and I realized, hey, I don't really know anything about the Aztecs except some of the stereotypes and some of the kind of common things that you think about when it comes to the Aztecs. And I just Googled what are the best books to read about the Aztecs. I was hoping for something that was kind of narratively focused, something more of a historical narrative, an account of some sort. And I saw a lot of good reviews for this book. I don't know how accurate it is. From what I looked into, it looked like it seemed like it was pretty well renowned. And what was different about this book is it's an account of the Aztecs taken from the Aztecs' point of view, the Mexica. And because a lot of what we know about the Aztecs comes from European settlers and colonizers, so all of the stories we typically have about them are through that lens of colonizers. So what this author did was she went to first sources, primary texts written by the Mexica and their descendants, and gives a good chronicle of kind of an overall history of the Aztec Empire, how it fell, all that sort of thing. Again, I was kind of hoping for a more narrative-driven thing. This was pretty much a textbook, so I didn't accidentally read it, but I wasn't expecting this kind of book, but still, regardless, it was very interesting. I probably don't need to say this because you probably already know it, but history, as you know, is just big one long story, and narrative in story is a huge part of filmmaking. So as I was reading this, it was giving me very strong images of things that I could put into movies. It was giving me ideas for character beats. It was giving me ideas about themes. It really inspired me to look back into more historical documents and events to pull from when I make my projects, because there's just a lot of crazy stuff in here, a lot of dark stuff, a lot of happy stuff, a lot of sad stuff. And yeah, it was just really, really interesting. And so Fifth Son is a book I'd recommend if you're interested in history. Again, I should say I'm not a historian. I don't know if there's any inaccuracies in the book. I don't know how it holds up with history scholars, but from what I looked into, it looked like it had a pretty good reception from people for the most part. Moving subjects again. This is an artist, Maxfield Parrish. Pardon the glare. I'm not sure if you can see that. This is an artist who I discovered probably recently. He's a pretty well-known artist. He's not some obscure, off-the-beaten-path individual or anything like that, but he was newer to me, and I think I had seen one or two of his pieces before, but one of my artist friends, who's also a teacher and he's also an artist, he was telling me about Maxfield Parrish, because that's an artist that he really looks up to, and his use of color and his compositions he found really interesting. And so I found this book recently and I picked it up, and there was just a ton of stuff for me to draw on recently. But yeah, as I've looked through this over the past several months, there's been a lot for me to draw on, specifically with the colors. And there's an image right here that gave me a lot of ideas when I was working on our new feature film, Happy Halloween. This isn't necessarily a Halloween image, but this gave me very kind of, there's something about the glowing orbs, these kind of clown costumes of sorts, the colors, the bright colors, the orange and the blue. It gave me a lot of ideas as I was working on Happy Halloween. And there's some other great things in here. I mean, here's a great one. It's called Harvest, fall, autumn. So this is an artist that I was thinking about a bunch as I was working on Happy Halloween. And so when that movie comes out, keep him in mind as you look through it, because I kind of felt like I was drawing from him a lot. The tone, the vibe, the colors. Obviously, this is very different than my movie. Our movie's a goofy improv comedy. But it was, this is a guy that was giving me a lot of ideas as I was planning for this feature film that we were doing. So Maxfield Parrish, if there's anybody who hasn't heard of him, check out his stuff. Changing genres and subjects yet again. Caliucci's new record, Sincerely. It's a new record that came out this year. I think it dropped sometime in May or April, sometime in the late spring, early summertime. And this is an album that I've just had on repeat. This is an album that's really easy to listen to, and it's just been on repeat a whole bunch as I've been drawing, as I've been writing, as I've been working on a bunch of art projects. And so I'm sure there's some sort of subconscious influences it had on my stuff. There's nothing in here particularly that I've been like, oh yes, that song has inspired this thing that I'm working on, or this has inspired that. but it's just an album that has been very easy to put on, listen to, and have it kind of run in the background. And typically when I listen to music, I listen to albums all the way. I don't like to jump around to songs because I kind of like the idea of a cohesive, catered experience over the course of, 40 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, however long a record is. I don't know off the top of my head how long this record is, but this is an album, again, that I've had on repeat as I've been working on stuff. And I really love the vibes of this record. I like the sonic kind of atmosphere that she's created, and I like the waves of different feelings and emotions and tones that she brings you through over the course of this record. So again, nothing explicitly in this record has given me any ideas for something I'm working on, but it's just been kind of a piece of art that has helped facilitate me making more art in a different medium. So this has been a pretty cool record. So if you're into, I don't even know what genre of music I'd call this, but if you're into being creative, let's say, put this record on and just see what happens. Jumping back in time, I got a book, Demons by Fyodor Dostoevsky. I read The Brothers Karamazov, I think it was late last year in the wintertime, and I absolutely loved it. I thought it was incredible. I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. And I'd never read him before. That was the first one. And then I picked up this one because for whatever reason, I was like, let me just start with the two biggest and longest and probably most difficult ones to read for whatever reason. And this is a book that, again, what I like about Dostoevsky is he's a very philosophical, theological-minded writer. He presents a lot of interesting ideas, and so if you're not really into people discussing big concepts and ideas, he might not be the author for you, but he's an author that I really like because he engages with a lot of philosophical thought. There's a lot of interesting ideas that he presents in here. His whole thesis behind Demons in particular, I thought was pretty interesting. I don't know if I completely subscribe to his message that it seems he's trying to make, but he makes a very compelling and convincing argument nonetheless in Demons, and I won't spoil anything. It's interesting to see kind of how prophetic this book would have been for Russia. So very interesting stuff. I find that when I'm reading something like Demons or Brothers Karamazov, what helps me when I'm reading this and where I find creatively stimulating is seeing how an author works with ideas, how he presents ideas, how he communicates ideas, how he discusses them, and brings us along a narrative and a journey with those ideas. And so I think that's a very helpful thing for filmmakers to do, because we don't really work in words so much necessarily. Typically we work in visuals and pictures. So learning how to convey and communicate ideas through the written word first and seeing how that can be done first, I think that's a really helpful step. But that can be a very helpful thing for someone if they want to do that with pictures. Between Demons and Brothers Karamazov, I don't know which one I like more. It's very, very close. I just picked this one up right here because I read this one most recently. But yeah, I'm kind of a noob when it comes to literature in general. So if you have any other similar authors to Dostoevsky, please let me know in the comments down below. Jumping forward in time, but not so modern, is Relativity by Albert Einstein, Special and General Theory. I'm actually in the middle of reading this right now. Anyone who knows me in real life probably already knows this, but I am the opposite of a STEM person. I am horrible at mathematics. I never did well at science or anything like that in school. Typically, when I was in middle school, in high school, I got straight A, or not straight A's, I got A's in the humanities, like reading, writing, history, that sort of thing. But then when it came to math, science, physics, that sort of thing, I did very poorly, like a D student, sometimes F. In fact, I think the last math class that I took in college, I got a D. I don't even think I passed it necessarily. I've just had really bad experiences with really horrible math teachers when I was young, and that's really tainted my view of STEM and that sort of thing. But regardless of all of that, I actually am fascinated by science, and I think it's a really interesting thing, particularly physics. Why I picked relativity was honestly because I felt like, I don't know that much about science. I'd like to learn more. So I picked up this book and I've been reading it slowly. I try to take it in bite-sized chunks because, again, I'm not a STEM person at all, but I found it really interesting. There's a lot of stuff so far that I remember from classes that I've taken before, but what I find really interesting about it is not only is it's just kind of cool to hear about. I think there's a lot that you as a filmmaker can draw from when it comes to movement and physicality and things that are kinetic and movement and time and space. And I mean, that's all relativity. There's a lot of that stuff in here. And again, I never would have thought this like 10 years ago, but for whatever reason, I kind of get excited to read through some Albert Einstein for whatever reason now. As bizarre as that sounds, because it gives me a lot of ideas for filmmaking and projects that I can work on. Yeah, so that's kind of all the things that have been inspiring me lately. Again, the point of this whole video wasn't to talk about and be like, ooh, look at how cool and cultured I am or anything like that, or look how smart I am. That's not me at all. I've said it before on this channel, I don't feel like I'm particularly incredibly talented at any one thing, but what I think I am good at is I know how to learn things on my own, and I'm good at starting stuff and learning just enough to get kind of a general grasp of something. So, this might seem like I'm bragging, but I'm not. Like, I'm dipping my toe into a lot of these different subjects, so I'm not trying to pretend I'm an expert at all of these. I'm just trying to share what has been inspiring me lately and where and how I've been getting my ideas. And some of those ideas might not be so clear because not all the work I'm working on right now is out in public and available to see. But you can check out Ballet Moon, which I released a couple weeks ago, and we have Happy Halloween coming out later this year. And this video also wasn't really to call out any filmmakers who just watch movies and love movies and can't... I mean, it kind of is calling out those kind of filmmakers. It kind of isn't. I don't know. I mean, you make what you interpret what you will from what I'm saying. But for me, I've just found that, that Orson Welles quote is to be more and more true these days, because he said something like, the more virgin our eyes are, the more we have to say, specifically relating to filmmakers or film students or whoever who they all they do is watch movies, and all they want to do is watch movies, and they have less and less to say. And I found that becoming very true of myself. And when I look at other kind of filmmakers out there, I won't name names at all, but there is a certain type of personality you run into in film school where, I was like this too. Like, you're obsessed with movies. It's all you think about. It's all you talk about. And that idea of, the more you consume movies, the less interesting you become. That's something that I've seen that I think is pretty true. It was true for me, and it's probably true for a lot of other people out there. I would encourage anybody, filmmakers or, artists or other artists, or people out there just in general, study all sorts of art forms, mediums, subjects. Go out and try new experiences, because if you're a painter and all you do is look at paintings, you're not going to make really good paintings yourself. You should look at basketball, you should look at sports, you should look at physics, you should go hike a mountain, and that'll give you ideas. If you are a musician, don't just listen to records all day long, don't just obsess over music. Go out and listen to the ocean, listen to the trees, go out into the city and just listen to traffic. Learn to sit there in silence. And I think if you open yourself out to way more possibilities and experiences in art forms, it'll make you a more interesting idea. These things won't get in the way of you creating interesting art within your chosen medium. In fact, it'll only inspire you and give you more ideas. Because when you go out, using an example of go out to and hike a mountain, and you are not a hiker, you're not a natural scientist, you don't study flora and fauna or anything like that. If you go out and hike a mountain, you're going to observe things and you're going to see things that those other scientists will miss because they don't have your perspective. And the cool thing about you is that you are going to filter your thoughts and observations through your artwork, whether that be film, whether that be music, whether that be painting or anything like that. And so, for me, because I'm a filmmaker, all of these things that I've experienced, I express through movies. So again, don't be afraid that these things will get in the way of you watching movies and being a good filmmaker. if you make films, you'll be a good filmmaker. Just make sure you have something interesting to say as well. But yeah, that's it for today, everyone. Thanks so much for watching. Again, hit subscribe so you stay updated when we release our new feature film, Happy Halloween. It's going to be out in October. It's going to be super awesome. A lot of these things that I've talked about today, those ideas, they have gone into this movie. So yeah, can't wait for you all to see it, and I'll see you on the next video.